What's up, everybody? Welcome to BWO's first podcast of the century, I guess we'd call it. We're welcoming just one of the guys that's been around forever and ever, even a little bit longer than I have. Actually, a lot longer than I have. Captain Bouncer Smith from down in Fort Lauderdale. He has been enjoying retirement since, June 1st of 2001. Is that right?
2020.
2020. Well, the computer got it wrong by a year, so 2020. Are you enjoying it?
Especially when I come to Florida to go fishing.
Well, now you get to go fishing and you don't have to take people fishing. I know it's a lot of fun because I guided for years and years out there, but it's always fun to put the rod in your hand and get on the front of the boat instead of the back of the boat.
There's a lot to be said for holding the rod, but by the same token, every once in a while, you wish you had control of things because people do things different ways and stuff. And a lot of times it works great. Other times you go biting your tongue. You don't say anything and offend anybody.
I know exactly what you mean. I go with these captains now when I'm doing the show, and it's great going with the younger generation out there. And it reminds me of so much. There's one captain here, local, Alex Huey.
Alex.
Alex.
Oh, he's such a great guy.
He's on the water so much, and when he's not, taking guide trips, he's out on the water doing, fishing or watching fish or looking for fish for the next day.
I went to his daughter's birthday party, a week ago, 1 year old, and I mentioned that it was the 1 year that they get to celebrate. Alex and Jillian, is it?
I think so, yeah.
But at any rate, this year they get to celebrate because after this year, it'll be all about their baby. But this year, the baby had a cake and cotton candy frosting, and Alex was putting frosting on her nose and pushed her face in the cake. And it was really, really so much fun to be with young people celebrating a birthday. And we're talking about people in their 30s instead of people in their 70s because that's where I hang out now with birthday parties or people celebrating their 80th birthday or something. It's a big difference.
This past July, I just rolled a even number that I didn't think I'd ever see, but I hit the big 6-0 mark, and it just seemed like the other day I hit the 50 mark.
They go faster. Wait till you get to the 7-0.
Oh, I've noticed that even the odometer starts clicking. You think it's in high speed. So thinking back to when you first started guiding, what got you into guiding?
I would have to first give credit to my father because as early as 5 years old, we lived up in Michigan, and if he was going fishing with his buddies, he would still make sure that I had some kind of a pole and a line and a hook, and it might be a sheet of bologna or it might be a hot dog. Just put a piece on, maybe you'll catch a bluegill. But my dad was very firm about one day every weekend was for home maintenance, whether it was gardening or painting the house or fixing the sink or whatever it was. And the other day of the weekend was outdoor recreational. It was shelling on Sanibel and Marco and going snorkeling in the Keys and going out on a headboat until we had our own boat. And just always something. Even if it was cutting firewood, that was considered outdoor recreation.
Oh yeah, I was the lawnmower every Saturday, especially in the summertime.
But see, lawn mowing, that was part of home maintenance.
Yeah.
That was one day a weekend. The other day of the weekend was purely recreational, except for firewood. So,
well, down here in Florida, growing up on Cocoa Beach, we didn't need too much firewood.
I grew up in Miami, and we had a fireplace, and we used it.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first house that I moved in after I got married, we had a fireplace here in Florida, and I had some of my Air Force buddies come down and visit, and they're like, "Man, do you ever use your fireplace?" And I'd burn a cord of wood, and they'd say, "You mean a rick of wood?" So you know where they're from, up north somewhere, if they say a rick of wood, or out west, that's what my buddy calls them. But,
I never heard of a rick of wood.
Never heard of a rick?
How many cords is that?
I think it's just about the same.
Oh, is it?
I think that's it. But so your dad got you into guiding?
No, my dad got me into fishing. And when I was 12 years old, I was making my pocket money by cleaning all the neighbors' fish. A lot of the people in the neighborhood went to Flamingo to fish. and I'd be cleaning their trout and their mangrove snappers and their redfish, and the next guy would be out fishing in the ocean, and I'd be cleaning his kingfish. Really funny story that gotta share with that is the guy across the street was a car dealer or salesman, and he would take his wife and my mother, and the three of them would go fishing on a weekday because he always sold cars on the weekend. And they went out, there was a buoy in 60 feet of water right straight off of Sunny Isles Boulevard. And they went by that buoy and they caught a big shark, but it didn't have any teeth. And they got it up to the boat and they cut it loose. And they went by the buoy later on in the day and they caught another big shark. And they got out of the boat and they cut it loose. And my dad says, "What color was this shark?" My mom says, "Oh, it was dark, dark brown and light brown and white, and the mouth was right across the front and there were no teeth in it." My father, fishing in Florida from 1956 until about 2000, never caught a cobia. My mother was cutting them loose because they were finger sharks. and they said they were both over 5 feet long, so they were a nice cobia.
Nice cobia.
Yeah.
my first cobia, I remember I was with my dad and his buddy named Jim McClellan owned Jim's Drugs there in Cocoa Beach many moons ago now. But this fish was swimming around the boat. And my dad yelled to Jimmy. He said, "Hey, Jimmy, there's a shark swimming around the boat back here." And Jimmy looked over and he says, "That ain't no shark." And so he rigged up a rod real quick and hooked it up. And my dad went over and grabbed the gaff. Jimmy didn't see what my dad was grabbing. And before my dad could not stop gaffing that cobia, which was about 4.5 feet long, 5 feet long, it was a big cobia. Jimmy was saying, "Don't gaff him yet." And about the time "yet" came out of his mouth is about the time that gaff hit that cobia. And he came alive, and my dad snatched him up, pulled him across the boat. The cobia hit me in the chest and slapped me clean across the sport fisherman that we were in. And
Yeah.
well, that was my experience of my first cobia.
Well, my son's first cobia was, "Hey, Dad, there's a shark following the boat." You know who we were fishing with? I'm sure you must have met Ron Ronconis a couple thousand times.
Oh, yeah.
We fished with Ron a few times back when my son was young. We were fishing the SAA. It was SKA's variety tournament. They didn't last anywhere near as long, but we fished in Miami and then we fished up in Canaveral together and had some fun.
Yeah. So what did you think of Canaveral back then?
Well, I wasn't as impressed as I am now because I've caught a lot more fish with Alex than we did that day. That day we did. I don't even know if we caught one. We might have caught one kingfish all day.
Really?
Trolling ribbon fish and the whole 9 yards. But the one time I went with Alex was the February 1st. So we caught a just barely legal, almost overslot snook. And then we caught a bunch of big bull reds. And then there was a little pod of giant bluefish popping up off the bow of the boat every once in a while. I think I fed them about a half a dozen plugs. And then, it's really funny, but in South Florida, you rarely see a triple tail except for when you're dolphin fishing. And they're usually 12, 14 inches long. I did catch them up to 7 pounds, but...
And that's on the east side, not over towards Flamingo, because I know I've caught it.
This is dolphin, mahi fishing off of Miami Beach.
Oh, okay.
But I went with Alex, and getting back to what I was going to say was, in all the years that I dealt with triple tail offshore dolphin fishing, I never ate one.
Oh.
They were like the little orphan that would swim up while you were on a floating piece of debris, and we'd always turn them loose unless we were having a bad day for mahi, and then we would ask the customer if they wanted to have it. So the few that we killed for our customers. But I went with Alex, and we caught 5 real nice cobia. Probably the smallest one was 7, 8 pounds. And when we got in, his wife came over and joined us at a restaurant where they cooked our catch. And I ate triple tail for the first time ever.
Pretty darn good, ain't it?
Well, then I ate triple tail the next night for dinner. And then I ate triple tail for next night for dinner. And then I think I had cold triple tail for lunch, and then there wasn't any more triple tail.
I like frying them up, and even make sure you save some for the next day and fry them in little strips, and they're just like taste like chicken strips to me the next day after you, especially when they got a good fat content in them.
How could you say such an insulting thing about a triple tail?
Because that's
everything
so good.
tastes like chicken, but if you want to step it up a grade, then you got things that taste like cobia or
that's for the people out there listening.
Yeah.
It tastes like, I don't know, chicken golden plated.
There you go, or something. The bottom line is I was in the charter boat business for 54 years.
Well, that was my next question.
I was on the water. Mind you, I was working on the water when I was 13. When I retired, I was 72. And in all that time, I never ate a triple tail.
Wow. How many did you catch? Uncountable in that
lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Mostly smaller ones. But the fact of the matter is now every time I come to Florida, we go to this one seafood place. Well, you've been to the old fish house down there in Grant.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had that big clam event there.
I've got about 12 million clams down there. We're going to release another 3 million tomorrow down there.
They just told me the other day they're going to be there again Earth Day this year.
Yeah,
or 26.
Yep, we're having it there again.
But at any rate, we eat there quite often because I stay in Malabar, and they frequently have triple tail or grouper cheeks, and you can't do better than those two.
Yep. Well, did Alex save the cheeks out of the triple tail?
I'm sure he did.
Those are like little just medallions that melt in your mouth.
Oh yeah, talking to the professional or the nearly professional fisherman that's listening to this, the biggest crime that I see in fishing is a boat that belongs to a multimillionaire comes back to the dock and they cut 2 fillets off of a grouper.
Oh.
And they throw the heads in the bay, get them to the bull sharks.
Mm-hmm.
There is more meat in the head of a grouper or even a snapper than there is in one fillet. You got the throat, it's muscle that never works hard. You got the cheeks, it does nothing but smile. And even up on top of the head, there's some meat. There's some of the best eating meat on a fish is in the head. And the saddest thing is when the guy's throwing the fish's head in the water, and then he's going to give a dock attendant a nice tip to thank him for bringing him a sleeve of ice, when 10 times better would have been giving that dock attendant that grouper head, because that guy knew how to take advantage of a grouper head. He was frequently Latin American, and all his life they were boiling up the heads and picking the meat out or cutting the cheeks and the throats. So
well, with the show now, since I changed over and did Blair Wiggins Outdoors, I'm doing cooking segments now. And one of the snapper tournaments we did, I brought home and did a snapper head soup. I mean, there's so much meat that gets thrown away off of these fish, and I really can't stand hardly to see somebody clean a fish that doesn't know what they're doing or thinks they know what they're doing, because they'll leave so much meat on a backbone. You want to go over and take that backbone and.
Well, one that I still haven't done, but it's so logical, is fish ribs. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say, I would never kill a permit to eat. But permit have huge rib cages.
Triple tail. I've done smoked triple tail ribs for years. They're giant bones in them. If you get one of those bones caught in your throat,
you're not going to get that bone caught in your throat unless you're, I don't know, maybe Tyrannosaurus Rex.
That's what I was just fixing to say. A T-Rex might get it caught in his throat.
Maybe one of your dogs might get that kind of bone caught in their throat.
So you strictly guided for 50 years total.
Full-time, 54 years.
Full-time, 54.
And of those 54 years, 25, I never used a mate. And I ran most weeks, 7 days a week, 8-hour days, rarely 6 days a week, especially early on because I had no competition. And that was plus 4-hour evening trips normally, and sometimes as many as 7 4-hour evening trips. I'd go catch sailfish all day or dolphin or whatever, and I couldn't wait to get back to the dock, clean the catch, get the old people off the boat, the new people on, and then run out and catch tarpon for 4 hours. And I don't have to tell you, but in South Florida, whether you're in Sebastian or Canaveral or Miami or down on the Keys or over on the Southwest coast, there are loads of times that a 4-hour charter or a 4-hour fun fishing trip means you're going to catch 3 or 4 fish that are in the 100-pound class. They might be 70-pounders this week or 70 and a 130, but you're going to catch 3 or 4 big fish in a 4-hour trip.
Yep, when they're in town, yeah, they're easy. They're easy to catch. So, did you ever do any inshore charters like Flamingo and down around that area, or were you strictly offshore and near shore? I've seen you a couple of times do some inshore stuff.
I still fish with a guy that taught me how to fish off Indian Key Bridge, and we were in high school, and we would go to Indian Key Bridge, and we would throw mirror lures up tide on the outgoing tide and catch enough mangrove snappers to pay for our expenses to go to the Keys and fish off the bridge. And then we would catch smaller tarpon, 20, 30 pounds.
The fun size.
Yeah.
We call the fun size now.
But we fished mirror lures more than anything else, and it was a ball. But we were down there, and I caught a big Spanish mackerel. That was 7 3/4 pounds.
That's a big one.
And we took it to Bud and Mary's to weigh it in. And it was go time in the morning. And all these men had raccoon eyes and fly rods in their hand. And I've got to do that one. I've got to be a guide in Isla Morada. So my first business of my own was at Bud and Mary's with Jim Brewer's skiff. He had lost his life searching for tarpon the day before a tournament. They crashed their plane and 2 guys lost their lives. But I had his boat. I was at Bud and Mary's in Isla Morada, and for 2 years I was a tarpon, bonefish, and run back to Flamingo and all that stuff. And my wife got sick, and she had a job at a hospital in Miami, so I had to move back up to Miami to be with her. And then to prove to her that I didn't give up something that meant too much to me, I bought a new house up in Pembroke Pines, but I have to be really honest about it. After all the years I had already been sailfish and tarpon were a lot more fun to me than bonefish and tarpon. So,
yeah, well, that and you don't have to work quite as hard. Well, I don't know. I've done the sail fishing I've done has always been easy because it's a time of year and it's off Stewart and they're pretty easy off of Stewart. But when I've had a couple of tough days sail fishing, but it seems that when you're pushing that boat around and you're not catching much, it's a whole lot harder to. Yeah,
but by the same token, when you're staked up chumming bonefish or you're staked up at the Pocket of Buchanan waiting for a school of tarpon to swim by, that's not all hard work, but you were on your feet all day and you were but you were in the bay and it was usually flat calm. When you're sailfishing, you're out there and you hope that it's 3 to 5 foot and the boat's rocking. And granted, there were times at Bud and Mary's where we had to go out, make a special trip to go out and cast net mullet. But for my whole career, I threw a 12-foot cast net almost every morning until I hired a mate, which was the last 20 years. But you threw a cast net every morning, and it might be 30 throws of a 18-pound cast net, 12-foot radius, to catch your bait to go fishing. Or there were many a day that we had to go out at 3:34 in the morning to catch bait, because when the sun came up, they went into hiding and catching goggle eyes and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, it's all. People don't realize how tough work guiding is, whether it is inshore or offshore. It is a lot of work, and people. I know when I was doing the tournament scene too, people used to tell me, "Man, it must be so great. You get to go fish every day," and I'm like, "Yeah, I get to go fish in those days where you walk out the door and Zeus is throwing bolts at you, but you still got to get out there and find where the fish are, or it's windy." And people don't realize when the wind's blowing out there, how much the wind blows and how you have to counter the wind, and you just get wore out. And I would pre-fish for like 2 weeks prior to some of these tournaments, and and then you got to turn it up to 104% on tournament days.
Well, you bring up to mind another really funny story. You talk about having to fish in the rain and in the wind, and the fish aren't biting, and this and that and the other thing. There's a young man that I got the pleasure to fish with when he was 8 or 9 years old. His dad brought him to Miami. He wanted to catch a tournament record, an IGFA world record tarpon. And we got him a tournament IGFA record African pompano, and we got him an IGFA record tarpon. Now, bear in mind that kids' records, we weighed the fish and released them. And his father would take 2 boga grips and hold one in each hand and stand on the covering board of my what would be a bay boat today. He would stand on the covering board with a boga grip in each hand, and he would pick a 93-pound tarpon out of the air high enough for me to read 2 scales without the fish touching the boat or touching the water. But the bottom line is this Buddy Smith, he called me every month now for 30 years. What are you catching? How you doing? I did this, or my dad and I did that, or everything like that. So he runs a charter business and a summer school for kids out of Little River, South Carolina. And I went over to see him one time, and we were going to go fishing. And we met at the dock in the morning. It's pouring down rain. So he says, well, let's go eat breakfast. Doesn't look like we're going to go fishing at all. So we went and ate breakfast. And we come out of the restaurant, and the rain stopped. And the clouds aren't quite as black anymore. I said, well, you want to give it a try? He says, sure, why not? So we go back to the dock. We jump on his bay boat, and we go 1 block. And now we're back in the rain. And then we run on down to a spot, and he anchors up, and we catch some rat reds and flounder and croakers and stuff, and that was with intermittent rain. And then he moves, and now it's pouring rain, and the wind's blowing, and it's cold, and we're sitting there, and we're not getting any bite. Well, matter of fact, he did catch a nice red in that spot, but then that was the last bite we had. And we're sitting there in the pouring rain, blowing 30, probably 55 degrees. And I turned to Buddy and I says, Buddy, I wouldn't do this if I was getting paid. And he looked at me and says, neither would I. I said, well, let's go home. But here's 2 guys that do it for a living, and we're sitting in the pouring down rain, cold, and they're...
But that's some of the only times you get to fish, because on the nice day you had clients on the boat.
Well, you know as well as, well, maybe not as well as I do, because I was really a glutton. But I loved my last day of work as much as I loved my first day at work.
Oh, it was always fun. The only thing that I really didn't like the last few trips that I did was how bad I was hurting the next day to go do the other trip, waking up the next day. I mean, and just having my bones hurt, have to take a hot shower for 10 minutes and then start the day.
Well, you need to find a good chiropractor or something. Because
I've only been to one chiropractor, and he tried to hit me with that little thing, and it goes tink, tink, tink on my back, and he goes, how's that feel? I was like, what are you doing? And he goes, I got this little thing. I'm like, what does it do? And he goes, to me, it didn't do anything.
Well, I went to the chiropractor. I was having back trouble one time. I'd go to the chiropractor on Monday and Friday, and by the time I got in my truck to leave this parking garage, I already hurt just as bad as when I walked in. So, but there are people that couldn't survive without their chiropractor. But the bottom line is that this shoulder blew out to where I couldn't even go on my boat for 2 months. This shoulder here hurts so bad all the time now that a half a day of plug casting for largemouth bass, and I can't fish anymore. It hurts so bad. I have spinal stenosis. I can't stand up for more than 15 minutes with a walker. So I wouldn't trade it for all the tea in China, but my boating life and fishing life ruined my skeleton.
Yeah, I was fixing to touch on that a little bit, inshore and offshore. We get some rough weather inshore, and I've been in some pretty nasty storms inshore up in the Indian River, and it's gotten, when there's 3-footers in the inshore river, in the Indian River, it's pretty nasty. And I've been offshore in some super nasty stuff during the tournaments. But back in my guiding days, I didn't travel around much to do anything other than just fish here. But I bet you've been in some pretty nasty stuff.
We were supposed to go to Bimini for a week with the My Beach Rod and Reel Club. And I had 2 men and a woman that were going to fish with me for the week. And she brought her gear down and put it on the boat the night before. And the guys came down in the morning and loaded their stuff, and I loaded all the boat stuff that you need to go to the Bahamas for a week. And I says, guys, actually before we loaded, I said, I'm not too sure we're going to go. It's really blowing. And they said, well, we really got to go because it's a club outing. And I had a 25-foot dusky. And so we loaded everything. And then I said, I'll go to the sea buoy. And I might turn around the sea buoy 2 miles out. Well, we pulled into Bimini after about 5 hours.
Wow.
No, not wow. They said, where the hell did you come from? I says, Miami. They said, do you know that thing out there's got a name? It was a tropical storm already, and we're running to Bimini in a 25-foot center console. The lady who loaded her stuff, she had like a 48-quart cooler that she used for a tackle box. The water in her cooler with it taped was up to the top.
Wow. So yeah, that's some pretty rough seas.
Yeah.
Was it a north wind?
Northeast.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh.
Against the Gulf Stream. Oh, I came back from Bimini one time. There was a Dusky Owners Tournament on Sunday, and I was on it in Andros on Saturday, and it was blowing out of the northeast, and we agreed that we would at least go to Bimini because you had to beat your way up to the outside of Andros, but then you go across shallow flats, and then you go across 10 feet of water, and then you get to Bimini, and then you got to take on the Gulf Stream in a blowing northeast wind. And we picked up another captain in Bimini, and he says, you're not going across, are you? I says, yeah. He says, you're really going to go across? I says, we got a Dusky Owners Tournament tomorrow, and I'm the MC. And I have to be there. And he says, well, if you have to be there, I have to be there, because he was a lesser sponsor with the same Ralph Brown and his family. And I said, well, I'm going. He says, well, I don't think we should go. I said, well, don't go then. Every man for himself. I have my customer with me. And he says, well, I guess I got to go. So we're going across in pretty much a pure beam sea, fortunately. And my customer, who is an avid fisherman and boater, is standing on the downwind side, and Dennis is sitting on the seat behind me. And I'd be down in the trough, and I'd ask the customer, how high is that wave? He says, higher than the outrigger. And then we'd be on the crest of a wave. I'd say, how high in the air are we? He'd look over the side and he'd say, we don't want to go there. Well, probably a third of the way across, we went there. The boat went sideways down off the crest and slid down sideways, still going ahead, but sliding down sideways, and hits the bottom of the wave, and everything in the boat, people, coolers, everything shifted to the port side. And I stopped the boat, and we straightened everything out. We tied a bunch of stuff on the upwind side so it wouldn't happen again. And I start running again. And the customer says, did you turn the radio on? I says, no. He says, well, the radio's on. And I look up, and I said, no, the radio's not on. The VHF's on, but there's no sound coming out of there. He says, well, I hear a radio or something. And I'm looking around, and I turn around, and I lean over. The guy sitting on the back seat, a full-time captain, a lifetime captain, he's saying Hail Marys. And by the way, the next day for the Dusky Owners Tournament, they had a hell of a party at the IT, or yeah, I think it was, no, not IT, at a park. They had a hell of a party.
I bet.
They didn't go
Man.
fishing, that's for sure.
Well, I did a FLW tournament one time, and have you ever met Captain Jim Ross here?
Yeah.
He was on my team, and we did a tournament out of Louisiana one time, and it was one of the FLW tournaments. You know what FLW stands for, right?
Not really. Probably not the one you're talking about.
Well, you can use the expletive that you want to, but I'll just say friggin' lousy weather. Because I think there was about 2 tournaments in 5 years that I fished that tournament series that it was a nice, beautiful day that we could go tournament fish and have fun. The rest of the time, the weather was nasty. And this particular kingfish tournament, we went to off of Fouchon from Venice. And coming back, it was 16 to 18 foot. They let us go prior to it hadn't turned, just like your story, it hadn't quite turned into a tropical storm yet.
Yeah.
But I think right at the time they sounded the gun to go, it came over the airwaves, it was a tropical storm and coming in. So they got legal by letting us go for that one. But yeah, that was some nasty weather on my end there.
Well, like you said a while back there, if you're going to be a professional fisherman, you're going to fish in some bad weather and some good weather.
Oh, yeah.
And the people are always going to go, God, you got the greatest job in the world. It's pouring down rain. It's blowing 50. It's cold. You forgot to bring another jacket. And the one you're wearing is all wet. And that we haven't had a bite in 5 hours. And the water doesn't look good. And the tide isn't right. And the people are not pleasant people. Most of our people are the greatest people in the world, but every once in a while you get one that, boy, I'll be glad when this trip's over. And then everybody reminds you of what a great job you got.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have traded my job for all the tea in China. I had so much fun. And to this day, it's a rare occasion when I say, okay, let's call it a day.
Yeah, my 8-hour days were like 10-hour days most of the time, 4-hour days. A lot of times I'd say to my clients, hey, I need to be out here the rest of the day. Y'all want to stay out? I get to fish, though.
Well, let's face it, there are days that the people want to go home and you don't want to go home. And there's days that the people don't want to go home and you want to go home. And there's days that you're all happy with the same situation.
Oh, yeah. And like you said, I wouldn't trade it for a desk job for nothing. If I had to do it all over again, yep, I'd still do it.
Sign me up.
Sign me up. All right, let me see what I know one thing I wanted to say. So earlier we talked a little bit about world record fish and my view on it when I was guiding. I could have caught a bunch of world records, but I let my clients, and I put all my clients on the world records and let them get their name in the books. Did you ever have any ambition to go after a world record fish or get your name in the IGFA?
My accountant for my business and my sister's accountant for her business was the same kid that I fished with growing up, a guy named Paul Leader. Matter of fact, he lives up in Titusville now, but he was a Miami boy. And he was an avid fisherman, and he had polio as a kid, so he had braces on both of his legs and spent a lot of time in a wheelchair and with crutches and stuff. But at any rate, he was hired to hold a tax symposium in Alaska by half a dozen Miami businessmen, back when things like that were not frowned upon by anybody. So they went to Kodiak, Alaska, and they caught sockeye salmon in a river, and then they moved over to the harbor, and they went out on a 55-foot headboat slash fish camp, hunting camp operation, and they went fishing for the day in the ocean. And my accountant, Paul, due to his polio, he can't fight heavy tackle. So he brought a traditional South Florida plug rod, deep jigging rod, and a handful of 3-ounce bucktails and some glowworms. And the captain says, what are you going to do with all that junk? He says, well, I can't use heavy tackle, so I'll play around and see what I can catch while these guys are fishing for halibut and lingcod and stuff. To make a long story short, when they were done at the end of the day, the captain says, can I buy all your tackle off of you? He had caught buku, halibut, and some lingcod, and he fished on that boat. That was 1987. He fished on it into the somewhere around 2005 or so, before maybe even 2010, before he finally had to give it up. But he would put together a group of 6 people, himself and 5 more, and they would fly to Kodiak, Alaska, and they would fish for 3 days, and then they would go back to the harbor, and they would take a day and they would fish the river system from shore for salmon, and then they'd go back out on the headboat for 3 days, and then they would fly home. And over the years, he had all the world's record halibut on fly and all the world's record halibut on real light tackle. And the captain's girlfriend was the cook on the boat, and he taught her how to light tackle fish, and she had a bunch of women's world records. And what fly wasn't in yet for separate. It was one division. But she had a lot of light tackle records. And the year we went was the first year they had ladies' world records for fly. And we get on the boat, and there were a tarpon guide from the Keys, a guy named Rini, and my accountant, and myself were all avid fly fishermen. And my brother-in-law, he was dabbling in fly. He wasn't really heavily into it yet. But at any rate, the 3 of us are on the boat. We all know a lot about what we're doing. And the captain says, you know, this might be the day that we catch the first 100-pound halibut on fly. So that first day, my accountant, Paul, had a fish up to the boat that was probably over 100 pounds. And the way that they weren't allowed to shoot them if you were going for a record. So they would get the fish up just below the surface, and they'd put 2 long-handled gaffs under it. And the captain would say, ready, and the mate would say, go. And they'd hit the fish with 2 gaffs and get it into the boat as quick as they could. Well, the halibut's up to the top, probably over 100 pounds. And the captain's got his gaff in position, and the mate goes to put his position, and the fly line gets wrapped around the butt of his gaff. So the captain says, ready, and the mate says, no. It's hard to tell no from go.
No and go.
The captain hit the fish with the gaff. The fish jumped off the gaff, broke the tippet, and got away.
Oh, man.
So we caught a lot of halibut on fly. It's the last day, our 6th day offshore. And the captain comes around, and I haven't caught a halibut all day. And I've been fly fishing for him all day. And the captain comes out, and Paul, my accountant, stand right next to him, and he says, it's 2 o'clock. We're going home at 3 o'clock sharp because I got to get you guys fish into the fish house so they can process them for you. And I have another charter in the morning. I got to get the boat ready. So we're going home at 3 o'clock. And Paul says, well, you know, we had one day that it was almost unfishable, so do the best you can for us. Well, in that hour, I caught 2 halibut, about 60 pounds apiece on fly, and Paul had already caught 2 on fly. And when I hadn't caught one, I said, Paul, he caught 2 right away after lunch, and he hadn't fly fished all day. So I'm going to borrow one of your flies. So I borrowed one of his flies, and then I caught 2 halibut, about 60 pounds apiece. And we were going home at 3 o'clock. At 3:15, I hooked up. And my fish went across, all the fish we caught, and we never had to go very far around the boat, but he went across the stern, up to the bow, under the anchor line, and spooled me on my fly reel. But he stopped. Well, the captain bumped the boat ahead. He had the anchor down, but he bumped the boat ahead and took up on the anchor to keep me from breaking the fish off. And I get clear, and we hear from the stern, hooked up. And the captain sticks his head out of the wheelhouse, and Paul is hooked up on fly in the stern. Now I'm back up to maybe 100 yards of reel line on my reel, and his fish is about to dump him. and he cups his spool and he breaks his fish off. What'd you do that for? We could have played around till we had to break it off. He said, or we could have caught them both. He says, you hooked up first. Your fish is more important. It took an hour and 15 minutes, and my fish was 111 pounds.
Wow.
And I thought I had a 15-pound tip, but I wasn't sure. It was supposed to be. I was supposed to be fishing a 20-pound tippet. No, I was supposed to be fishing a 15-pound tippet because that's the only fish Paul didn't have the record on. I was supposed to be fishing 15, but I put on a 20-pound tippet, I thought, and we entered the fish in the 20-pound class, and then it tested out at 15 pounds.
Uh-oh.
And I caught a world record yellow eye rockfish. Those are the only records I ever submitted. I did catch a world's record mullet snapper in Costa Rica, but Marty Rostig told us who to fish with and stuff. And we got off the boat, he got on the boat, and he caught a world's record mullet snapper.
I used to take Marty and Martini. I used to take them fishing up here for the redfish up here, and I got his kids their records for redfish. And
well, didn't you black drumfish for them too, or was that somebody else?
That was me. We did a trip from Fort Pierce, went all the way up to the Banana River. Actually, we went all the way to Titusville, and it was the last spot of the day. I was giving up. Couldn't find a black drum.
Fort Pierce was as far north as you could depart from.
Yeah. So we couldn't get out of the boat, out of the boundary, but you could leave inside the boundary. That was the Met tournament, I think.
Yeah, Metropolitan.
Actually, believe it or not, that is the black drum. I had it mounted.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's it.
But my customers have a 77 or have set 77 world records. And we released at least a dozen fish that were world's records that we chose not to kill. Like I had a guy... We call him, when he books me, it's him and his son, and he usually have another father and son with him. And people say, what are you doing tomorrow? We're going zing pow fishing. Well, this guy fishes 6-pound first. And if the weather's good and the sailfish are thick, then he always tries to catch one on 4. He and his son have both caught tarpon over 90 pounds on 4. Or I should say he and his son and I, because I love to tear my Evinrudes to pieces for him. But at any rate, we sing bow fish together all the time. Well, he caught a 40-pound African pompano on 6, and the record was like, at the time, 30 pounds. And I said, you want to keep it for a record? And he says, I fought that fish for almost 2 hours, and you want me to kill it? We turned it loose. That day, we only used 8 pieces of bait. We caught a cobia, and we caught, it was 6 pieces of bait. It was a cobia and 5 African pompano, all on 6-pound tests, and all fish over 20 pounds.
That's incredible. How much, with all the conservation efforts, and that's how we've kind of got a lot closer here with, Corey and Derek Red Wine and all with Sea Safe and Star Bright with Gregor, and
is it one ocean or one boat, or
it's all under one water now.
One water, that's what it is. I knew.
And Star Bright, they've been a sponsor with me for 30 years now. And
they were a sponsor for me with supplies. Mm-hmm. From the day they went in business, practically.
But they have done a lot in the conservation area, especially here with my Indian River Clam Restoration Project, Corey Red Wine with all her mangroves, and they're helping out a lot. But
how about going partners with Derek on that big piece of property that we're going to make into a golf course?
Yep.
Now it's going to be a mangrove swamp into eternity.
Yep. Let's hope it stays that way.
Well, it will, because... Yeah.
It should be donated as conservation land.
Corey and Derek have a young man, and the Dornauer family, which was Starbright, he's still, Gregor's still young enough to worry about things, and Eric Applegate will carry on, and Eric's got babies, and he's with Starbright. And
oh yeah, he definitely wants to see it. He's going to have to top his snook he got with me at the last Sea Safe event.
You dirtbags. I would think I was the only guest that did not catch a real big snook.
Didn't get
These
one?
guys are coming in the afternoon with 25-pound snook stories time and time again, and I fished with Alex and I fished with Adrian Gray, two very good fishermen. I caught a 5-pound sea trout on a plug.
That's a good trout.
Or no, I caught a 5-pound sea trout on a croaker, but I caught a 4-pound sea trout on a lure, and we took Emily from IGFA out, and we got her a tarpon on light tackle on a moonfish jig, and we had the funniest thing in the whole outing. We had wonderful artist Dennis Friel
Dennis
with
well.
us, and Adrian hooked a black drum, and I got video of Dennis trying to net the black drum, and he didn't lock the pin in the handle. He would scoop the black drum, and the net would flip over, and the fish would fall in the water. And he's scooping it, flipping over the other way, and he'd fall in the water. He finally got it in the boat, but it was a miracle that it happened. But it was so funny. But
That's funny.
but we talk about the fish that were caught. But here we are, we're in Grant, Florida. We're at the Old Fish House and the property next door. And we've got kids reaching into a bucket and grabbing clams and walking out on the dock and throwing live clams into the Indian River Lagoon in an area that was marked off so that when they were done with the kids, they could put a net over it so the fish couldn't eat the clams. What did we drop? 6 million clams that day from
the drone. I think we
drone?
did 6 million, and then we had another 350,000 of the bigger clams that the kids were throwing in the water.
And we did a big bay cleanup on the last day, and we had barrels and barrels and barrels of trash we picked up. On my boat, we had the rim of a tire. We had another tire. We had the remains of a beach chair and the beer cans and the soda cans and the water bottles. And I mean, every boat came in with loads of trash.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a lot of slobs out there that don't care what they throw in the water. So
of course, Blair tried to steal the show by trying to feed some young lady to a stingray.
No, that wasn't she. I told her to slide her feet, and she's not scared to go back in the water. I saw her the other day. And she's all healed up now. And I said, that's not going to deter you from going in the water again. And she's like, no way. So that's a good thing.
Well, Corey Redwine said that the good Alex Gorcelli, or what was his name?
Goritsky.
Alex Goritsky got barbed this summer, and somebody else on the clam project got barbed this summer.
I think it was Norm that got hit.
Yeah. So
they're
the
nasty.
fact of the matter is, if you have a healthy bay, you're going to have some stingrays around. And you have to remember that you never pick your feet up when you're wading and you can't see what you're stepping on, because if you do the stingray shuffle, they'll run away from you and you'll never be on top of their back. But if you step on their back, they stab this dagger into your foot or your ankle. Or
I stepped right on top of one time, and it went through the top of my foot, severed the tendon of my big toe. It retracted up to my shin, so the doctor had to get in there and surgically get it back down and tie it all together. And yeah, I was in a cast for like 4 months. It was no fun. But yeah, our conservation efforts here going on with the Indian River Lagoon clam. Sorry, that wind. Yeah, our efforts here with the Indian River Clam Restoration Project is going well. We're going to release another 3 million clams tomorrow, which brings our total up to, I think, right around 65, 70 million clams that we've actually put back in the estuary. And, you know, it's really not noticeable when you go out and see now, but we've had all the rain and the wind and stuff. But from our water samples, when we're sampling around the clam beds, and from the reports I'm getting, the clams are getting repopulated. It's doing exactly what I thought it was going to do when I wanted to start it years ago. But people are finding baby clams all over the place, which is good. I mean, it's a great thing to see.
Well, put it into perspective, because it's such an important project. And to me, you have been the most active person in this from day one. You've always been my idol when it comes to waterway restoration in the Indian River Lagoon. But when I was a kid, my parents and their friends would come up to Sebastian and bring home bushels of clams and have big clam bakes and enjoy them to no end. And nobody ever believed they'd put a dent in it.
No.
But the guys tell me that it reached the point that you could not launch your boat at a boat ramp because there were so many commercial clammers working in the Indian River Lagoon from all the way up to beyond Canaveral, all the way down to Fort Pierce.
When I first started guiding, that was back in 91, I think it was, 1991. There was about 7 clammers in Brevard County, and and you could tell the clam boats because they get these big giant numbers on the side of the boat. It was CL001, and I knew 003 through 6, I think, and then there was another 3 clammers out there that, it was minimal. And then by 2010 or 2009, there was like 10,000. There was over 10,000 clammers in the Indian River right here on the Space Coast, and you could walk across them.
And then you have no longer clams and oysters. The thing I learned about clams from what's the doctor from
Dr. Todd Osborne.
Dr. Todd Osborne taught us at the ICAST last summer that a clam filter feeds. He sucks in water and he takes the nutrients out of it and spits the water back out. A shrimp walking around on the bottom of the Indian River Lagoon can't filter feed. He has to have something to chew on. Well, a clam filters more than he can consume, so he spits out these nutrient balls.
They're coagulated.
Yeah, and the shrimp survive by eating the coagulated nutrients that the clam spits out. And a clam and an oyster can clean as much as 50 gallons of water per animal per day. So you have a healthy clam and oyster population, and you've got a huge cleanup of the sediment. And then you take, everybody's also in the group is also involved in mangrove trees, and mangrove trees build shoreline, prevent erosion, and they collect garbage. Dead leaves, they collect water bottles and everything else.
And give fish homes.
Safe homes. Ain't that the truth? Yeah, they're so safe that I can't even get them out of the mangrove roots.
One thing about the clam restoration project that I started, I wanted to really start it back in 2010, 2011, but there was nothing here of a clam restoration project. The only thing that I could find, it was 2016, I found one that had started up in New Jersey up there, but to repopulate up there that they had cleaned out. And, there was nothing down here. So after I started it and started doing seminars, I remembered back on, my buddy, I had 2 people out there that I were real good friends with growing up, and they were clammers. I used to jump on their boat and grab a bag or 2 of clams, take home and have a good clam bake, not thinking that we're going to take all the clams out of the river, but where was I going with that? Oh, okay. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's bycatch to any commercial fishing out there.
Almost.
And clamming is no different, and it is pretty detrimental for clammers. I mean, by clammers. They use these rakes that are 38 inches wide, 40 inches wide. They weigh 15, 20, 25 pounds, and they get in these big boats that the wind push them across the flats, and there's these giant teeth that come down off right in front of the basket where everything collects. And it'll go 6 inches, 8 inches down in the mud, and then they yank it up and give it a shake, and whatever's in the basket, which is usually clams, oysters, whatever they're getting, is in the pouch. But what I used to see when I'd jump on my buddy's boat was horseshoe crabs that he would catch, and there was hundreds of them on his boat the first couple of times I went. And then right about when the clam industry died, there was no more horseshoe crabs on his boat when I would go get clams. And I didn't put two and two together at the time that it's a bycatch and they've killed them all. But he even said, I don't get near as many now. I said, because I asked him, I said, well, where are the horseshoe crabs? He goes, I don't get them anymore. So I figured, he pretty much, with 10,000 boats out there, they decimated them. Well, but not only the horseshoe crab, but you had our starfish out there. You had the spider crabs, everything that had a thin shell on it, plus all the grass beds that they tore up.
I was going to say,
anything that had a thin shell, which
and
is
soft corals and hard corals, everything that grew.
The sponges, everything that was a filter feeder out there got decimated by the clam industry out there. So it, hopefully, it'll never come back again where they can, commercial fish in recreational waters because, I know I was a commercial fisherman way back when at a time, way back when I was a teenager.
Well, it kind of parallels the menhaden problem. But I know I love to have a dozen clams for appetizer. I know
me too.
you love a dozen clams for an appetizer.
I like 2 dozen.
Well, I was being modest. I'd like to have some triple tail to go with it, so I don't get too full up on clams. But the bottom line is we all like to eat clams. And we all like to have menhaden chum when we're going to fish yellowtails. But there has to be more effort made to protect the food supply of everything else. You take a clam, it's food for a pompano, it's food for a redfish, a flounder,
everything
a black drum, a crown conch. Who would ever think that a clam was food for another shellfish? But
whelks and
it's a food chain. And the same thing with menhaden. And the menhaden is the same parallel situation because without menhaden, you don't have striped bass, you don't have snook, you don't have tarpon, you don't have et cetera, kingfish, right on down the list. And then the tragedy that's happening today, to me, my most near and dear fish, is a menhaden boat sits on a school of menhaden, and they haul up these nets with millions of menhaden, and they may have 30 tarpon in the net because there was a school of tarpon.
I've got video from Louisiana, the pogie netters out there, and there was a big eagle ray, there was a bunch of jack crevalle, a ton of redfish, and it's one of the most unregulated fisheries out there. Because they give them quotas of pounds, and back years ago the pogies were giant, so they would reach their limit earlier. Now they have to catch more because they're smaller, and they're decimating them out there in Louisiana, just like they are off North Carolina.
And in Louisiana, there's a protected area half a mile from shore, and they're on the verge right now of reducing the protected area to a quarter mile. And if this podcast goes out soon, please research a little bit the menhaden harvest situation and write or call your appropriate politicians to tell them that the menhaden have to be protected.
Do a search on Facebook. Just put menhaden in the search engine, and you'll see all the campaigns going on out there right now to stop it. I remember back in Cocoa Beach, and I wanted to touch on this. I'll ask you this one here real quick. I never got to travel around to go to different areas to fish much, and I really didn't have to because in Cocoa Beach we had all the migrations of everything really but a bonefish. We had sailfish.
Well, there's bonefish here now.
There's snook all the way up in Georgia now too.
Yeah.
But what's the furthest place you've been to travel, and what'd you catch?
Well, there was a short period before my son was born where I went to Ocean City, Maryland for 5 years in a row to blue water fish, white marlin and tunas and stuff. I spent the summer in Oregon Inlet, North Carolina, blue marlin and white marlin and bluefin tunas and kingfish and whatnot. So in the 1975, I took a boat from Bahia Mar to Cozumel, Mexico, and did some fishing down there. And I guess it was probably 1980 or so. I took a boat to St. Thomas, along with Stuart Loveland, and we were fishing with Winthrop Rockefeller III, who started the Billfish Foundation. And later on in my career, I took a guy nighttime sword fishing, and we caught a nice swordfish, but he spent the evening talking about how he'd like to have a swordfish tournament in the Cayman Islands to expose the people there to the fact that they have swordfish and that they could fish for them. And so I did a dozen swordfish tournaments in the Cayman Islands, which now I get email every week or so. So-and-so caught 3 swordfish last night, and so-and-so caught a 300-pounder yesterday in the daytime. And now all the natives there, the Caymanians, they all include sword fishing in their repertoire of things to do to catch a good eating fish.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had a customer who swordfished with me in Miami who asked if I would come to Italy and teach sword fishing. And I said, to be very honest with you, Massimo, I said, if I go first class all the way, I don't care about making any money on the trip. I just want to go do it. I flew first class to Rome. A beautiful 31-year-old Italian girl met me coming off the airplane, and she walked me out to a Audi touring car with a chauffeur, and they showed me all around Rome for a couple of days. And then they took me down to the coast, and I got on the boat. We went down to Ventotene, and the first day I was in Ventotene, I was in the cockpit of a smaller sport fishing boat, probably 40 foot, and there were 100 people behind the boat watching me rig the rods, tie up the leaders, rig the baits, and everything else. And then 20 guys, maybe 25 guys, got on this 40-foot sport fisherman, and we went daytime sword fishing for a couple hours, which isn't enough time, but we did it. And then the next day in the morning, I was in the cockpit again, and I did all the prep work for going nighttime sword fishing. And then we went into a conference room, and there was a Italian marine biologist who was very fluent in English, and he talked about the habits of swordfish in the Mediterranean Sea and what he knew about swordfish. And then I talked about how to catch swordfish, and I would say a page. And then he would repeat it in Italian, and I would do a page, and he repeated in Italian. And then we got 30 guys on the same boat, and we went nighttime sword fishing. And the regular tournament started the next day, so they said, well, about midnight, they said, we're going to have to go in because we all got to go fishing in the morning. And I was winding in the last line, and we caught a swordfish. So,
so about Italy's the furthest you've been away?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I guess my furthest is going to be Alaska. I've gone to Costa Rica. It's not Alaska's the furthest. I think I've been away from home.
As I mentioned, I went to Alaska, and I went to Costa Rica and caught a world record there. But we went there to catch roosterfish.
Oh, yeah.
What a fun trip we had.
Yeah, that was a fun trip when I went down there.
Let me tell you something that may benefit somebody that's planning a trip. We went to Alaska. We flew into Anchorage. We did rent a car, and we started to drive out to Denali and found out we didn't have enough time to do anything, so we turned around and drove back to town. And then we were on the boat for 3 days, and one day on Kodiak fishing the river system, and then back on the boat for 3 days. Then we flew back to Anchorage, and we rented a car, and we did go down to, I can't remember the harbor right, but anyway, we were down to the south side of the main body of Alaska, and got to walk on a glacier and stuff. It was really good, but we didn't go to Denali, which is where all the wildlife is seen and all. We didn't go to any of the bear places or anything like that. And then we decided we were going to go to Costa Rica for rooster fish, and learning what we had in Alaska, we contacted a travel agency, and we said we want to experience Costa Rica and we want to do some hardcore fishing. And we know that our guide is going to be Bobby McGinnis, so you got to get us booked up with him. And then we want to see what Costa Rica offers the tourists. So we went to a rainforest. We went whitewater rafting. We went to a volcano. We watched the volcano in the daytime and then erupting at night, and it was spectacular. We went to a coffee plantation, and we walked all through the plantation, learned how they raise and process coffee. And then we drove by Los Sueños, went back to the airport, and we flew down to Golfito to fish. And it was so much more rewarding. Of course, my brother-in-law didn't think much of it because he was a race car driver, an auto mechanic, and every manly thing, and an avid fisherman. And we had a chauffeur in a van to move us from place to place before we went to Golfito. And going up through the mountains, my brother-in-law got car sick. And then we went whitewater rafting, and he got thrown out of the raft. And then we went to the volcano, and we checked into our hotel room, and he walked out on the back patio and spooked two macaws, and they about knocked him over. They flew right into him. And then we were fishing in Golfito, and one day we agreed that we'd take my nephew, who was with us on the trip, that we would go marlin fishing for one afternoon. And the captain said, no, you have to go marlin fishing in the morning. So we went marlin fishing in the morning, and my nephew caught a 400-pound blue marlin. And then we fished in the afternoon, which we knew the day before was very slow. And the poor brother-in-law got skunked. So he was attacked by the birds, thrown out of the raft, skunked. He just had all the bad, and got car sick.
That doesn't sound like a fun trip.
Well, he did catch a lot of rooster fish and other exotic fish.
Well, as long as he caught some good fish, it's better than coming home with goose eggs.
No, he came home very happy.
My trip down to Costa Rica, I caught one rooster fish. They had red tide that had come in, and we took a trip all the way. I was in Jaco, and we took a trip. We had to go all the way up to Los Sueños in the boat to get me a rooster fish. But it was a good one. I had a blast up there, man. Some of those big Pacific sails, that was incredible. Just absolutely incredible fishing. But is there any place that you want to go but you never did go?
There are two places that really are on the list. One I thought I would never do, and one I thought I would get to do, and I haven't done it yet. Maybe I could pull it off in the next couple of years, but I always thought it'd be nice to go to the Great Barrier Reef in Australia and catch barramundi and catch or see big black marlin caught. And then the place that really, really has me still hoping to do it is in Argentina or Brazil. Is it Brazil or the Golden Dorado?
Yeah.
Which is a couple small countries, and I think it's also...
That's high elevation too, isn't it?
Not real high.
Not real?
No. If it was real high elevation, I'd be in trouble because out of the last 5 times I went to Jackson Hole, I was in the hospital 2 out of 5 times, and they thought that it got kicked off by altitude, but I ended up with pneumonia, and it was ugly.
I did a high altitude out at Granby Reservoir, and I got altitude sickness out there, and that ain't no fun.
That's another place that would be on my list too, talking about altitude. Jurassic Park down there in Chile or Argentina, whichever it is.
That would be cool. I did make it to Costa Rica, but I did make it down to Brazil for the peacock bass. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, we have such good exotic fishing here that I can live without going to the jungle.
Oh yeah, now you can go catch 7, 8, 9, 10 pounders down in Miami.
Yeah, not very many big, but by the same token, if you scale down your tackle, a 5 or 6 pound peacock bass is not only a great fighter, but he is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, very
and we've
fish.
got the clown knife fish, which swims backwards, jumps, swims forward, and I set out to catch one artificial lure, and the first day I tried to do it, I caught one on a NLBN little 3-inch paddle tail.
Kind of looked like the shad they eat down there.
Yeah.
Was it Lake Ido you were at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what else?
That's where I
think,
caught mine.
You know another lure that would have to be deadly for them that I haven't tried yet, but it terrorize.
Yeah, that would
It's
probably work
got to
pretty
be
good
deadly for clowns.
too. Yeah, I'm sure it would be.
Now, the last time I went to Lake Ida, I brought everything to try to catch one on fly, but we only had one clownfish bite the whole trip. We had one guy who was there to catch a clown. I was there to try to catch a snakehead, and we were fishing with Bill Dupree, a very good guide. And the only clown on the boat I caught, I didn't fish with bait for hours. And this kid had never caught a clown, was fishing 2 or 3 rods with bait. And he never got a clown, and I threw out a bait one time, and I was talking to another captain on the phone, and I got a bite, and it was the only clown we caught. But the kid who was hoping to catch a clown caught his first crappie ever and his first bluegill ever, and he had a bluegill that was bigger than my hand.
Wow, that's a wild. I thought everybody catch a bluegill by the time they're 5 years old.
Well, especially when you figure that he and I went fly fishing in Alligator Alley several times. But we went to Alligator Alley, and his girlfriend caught a couple of bluegills, and I caught a couple of bluegills, and he didn't catch one, and we were all using the same tackle. So, you know, it's kind of like some days you eat the bear, and other days the bear eats you. And it's always something that drives us crazy, because a lot of times everybody on the boat's using a live shrimp for tarpon. And one guy will get 5 bites, and the guy next to him will never get a bite.
It's the way they hold their mouth.
And yesterday, there were 3 of us on the boat. One guy did not catch a bass. One guy caught 1 bass. And I caught 3 bass on surface, NLBN surface swimming K-tails. And today I was throwing the same lure and never got a bite on it. And the other guys were tearing up the bass on lures.
That's pretty wild how that works.
So I finally switched. One of them had taken some frogs last night that were dark green, and he dipped them in a paint for lures, a rubber.
The dye?
Yeah, well, it's not a dye, it's a paint more like. But anyway, you turned the ends of their legs, and they were paddle tails. They weren't, hairy frogs. But he dipped them in the paddle tails in this bright green stuff instead of dark green. And today I caught my first 3 bass on a frog, on that frog that they created last night.
That's pretty cool. Well, I'm gonna switch gears on us right now. I'm gonna talk about TV shows and one TV personality that we both had a lot of common in with, I guess you could say. But it was when I was in my highlight of my 320 plus days a year of guiding. I'm sure you were at the same, but doing shows with Mark Sosin. I loved doing shows with Mark Sosin.
I have an obligation to throw Mark under the bus. He's not here to defend himself anymore, and I loved him to death. But he spoke at the Miami Beach Rod and Reel Club when I had just moved back to Miami after being down at Bud and Mary's. And I had developed a real good tarpon fishery right off the north end of Miami Beach. I was catching a lot of tarpon. And it's a beautiful backdrop, the hotels and the palm trees and everything else. And he spoke at the Rod and Reel Club, and I went up when he was done, and he's got to have a guy stand around. I waited my turn, and I handed him my card, and I said, Mr. Sosin, I am catching tarpon off of Miami Beach, and it's a beautiful backdrop. If there's any way I can ever help you, please give me a call. Son, I wouldn't use you on TV or in a magazine article. So I turned to walk away, kind of muttering under my breath about what I thought about him, too, now. And it was really cute. But 4 or 5 months later, my phone rings. Can I help you? Son, this is Mark Sosin. And I'm in trouble, and I was told if anybody could rescue me, you could. I said, what do you need, Mark? He says, the state budgeted me 6 days of fishing to show different ways to release fish. And I spent 6 days in Key West and 1 day in Flamingo, and I have 1 Jack Crevalle to show for it. I said, well, Mr. Sosa, I think I can do better than that. And we went out a couple of days later, and in a half a day, we caught 11 different species and showed 8 different ways to release them.
I remember watching a show with you and him one time. Y'all were in the canal systems in Fort Lauderdale catching tarpon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and that was a cool show. I mean, it was hearing Mark. You do a good Mark, by the way.
Mark and I did one show. It was my record for show fiascos. It took us 18 days to make a show.
Wow.
The first day we went out and we caught a couple of snake kingfish, and it started blowing, and Mark didn't like shooting waves. So we went in the bay and we caught a big tarpon, and it never jumped. And when he got home to check the tape, the camera was malfunctioning, and it was half black and white and half in color, alternating. So then that was a 3-day shoot, and he didn't even come down the next 2 days. It was blowing and raining. Then we scheduled 3 days, and it was blowing and raining. They sent the boat down, but I never saw any him or his crew. And then he didn't even send the boat down. That would have been 7, 8, and 9. And then the next time, we called it off a week in advance because the forecast was so bad. And finally he says, Bouncer, we're making a show. Oh, no, I take that back. And on 13, 14, 15, we did fish in the bay one day, and we did catch a tarpon, and he got good footage of it. But then in 16, 17, and 18, he says, Bouncer, we're going to make a show to this trip if we have to go to a tackle shop and make it. and it was windy, and we caught another tarpon, and we anchored up inside a Halver Inlet, and we caught a bonefish, and we chummed up the big Jack Crevalles, and we caught some Jack Crevalles, and we ended up with a pretty good show. But that was 18 days we tried to do a show.
Wow.
And after that, he and Tommy Green would have a show every year on Tommy Green's dock. Tying knots and rigging baits.
Oh, Mark was big on knots.
Oh, yeah, he was big on, this is my tackle box for this, and this is my tackle box for that.
Let me show you my tackle box. And he'd show you every lure that he had in his tackle box. The slow days, because he'd have to pick out and show you 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 lures. But if the fish were biting good, he'd show you 1 or 2 lures and get back to the fishing.
But by the same token, everything that Mark did, he tried to teach that guy in Ohio
Oh, yeah.
something about saltwater fishing.
Yeah, he helped me out a lot when I started my show.
Oh, he helped me a lot when I was doing my business. I mean,
he'd be like, you tell anybody I helped you out with this, I'm going to skin you.
Have a 30-minute TV commercial is awful expensive for a little charter boat captain on the coast somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's a very important thing. There might be some poor kid that wants to be a charter boat captain that's watching. And I can't overemphasize that a woman captain named Connie Mirabella probably gave me the most valuable advice I got on how to build my business. Jim Hardy was the outdoor writer for the Miami Herald. And he called the Castaways dock, and the boats there rented out chairs. Each chair was $15. And at 3 chairs, the boat paid its bills. 4 chairs, they made a little money. 5 chairs, they were starting to do decent. And 6 chairs, they were very happy. Plus, they would have mount commissions and stuff like that, and tips and whatnot. But at any rate, Jim Hardy, the outdoor writer for the Miami Herald, calls up on the dock phone, and he said he'd like to take his nephew out on Saturday. And nobody would pick up the phone and say they would take him. So then Connie, who spent a lot of time around our boat with my boss, she says, I heard Jim Hardy was calling on the dock. I says, yeah. And she says, I got to go down my boat and call him. So she went down there. So Saturday morning, she's got 4 paid chairs and Jim Hardy and his nephew up on the bridge in the other 2 chairs. And he goes out fishing, and I went up to Connie later on. I says, Connie, nobody would take this guy fishing. What inspired you to take him? And she says, next Sunday I'll show you. Okay, whatever you say. Next Sunday, she comes down to my boat, the Sunday Miami Herald. Remember back, you probably remember newspapers. The audience may have never heard of a newspaper. The Sunday Miami Herald sports section, there was a half-page story about Jim and his nephew going fishing on the Connie M3 out of Castaways Docks. Well, that's just like going with Mark Sosin. Fishermen can't afford that kind of advertising.
No, after my first show I did with Mark, I think I did a total of 6 shows with Mark. But after my first shows, when he was on TNN, I mean, and everybody in the world, I think, was watching him, because after that show aired, I don't think I ever advertised again. But I did do, a few more shows with Mark. My phone, about 3/4 of the way through the show, I would already be, booking 20 trips.
See, Did you run out of tape?
Oh, that was that one. Don't worry about it. I got the other 2 going.
But the bottom line is that Mark was wonderful to take fishing.
I loved fishing.
And he always paid for the expenses.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that as a charter boatman, whether it's a writer or a TV show or a podcaster or a YouTuber, if you know for sure that they're legitimate, it's a good investment to cater to those people to some extent. It's like Steve Waters, the editor of the sports section for the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale, told Steve that he was using Bouncer too much. And Steve said, boss, Bouncer goes fishing every day, and he lets me know, or I'll call him. He tells me what the fish are really eating, where they're really at, and give me good information. And he's the only guy that's out there all the time, and he always gives good information. Who am I supposed to call? Somebody that's sitting in the kitchen?
Yeah, that's Alex Huey up here now. His phone rings off the hook.
Oh yeah,
because I know when I want to go out, I'll give Alex a call and say, "Hey man, you want to share some info?" Because I'm not out there every day like I used to be.
Well, I got news for you. I'm mad at you.
What I do now?
Because the last 3 times I tried to get a trip with Alex, he was sold out.
Well, that I do have a little bit to do with that, because
I did this trip. Arranged it. I have a day in March with Alex. I just have to tell him which day it is. But
you will definitely catch some fish.
I will have my reservations in with Alex before the 15th of December.
Cool beans. Well, he is definitely a good dude. Well, we've covered quite a bit on this podcast from day one to basically we haven't covered the total retirement yet. But
I don't think we haven't covered the retirement worth a darn, because you don't know what I caught today, and you don't know what was done to me yesterday.
That is a fact.
Today I was bass fishing, because you're probably running out of tape.
We're getting close, and we don't use tape anymore. I did. When I started, we were still using tape.
Oh, it's digital now, isn't it?
It's all digital.
But at any rate, today I was bass fishing in Three Forks, which is part of the tributaries of Stick Marsh and Headwaters. And I caught my first 3 bass on a frog. Oh, I did tell you that before.
We got that one.
So I'll just skip. And when we had some shiners with us, and I caught my biggest bass since I was 10 years old, which was 6 pounds, 14 ounces. But yesterday, my last crew member worked for me the last 13 years I was in business. Great kid. Abraham Raymond goes by Aby. And 5.5 years ago, he had a son. And the first year or 2 wasn't very conducive to sharing fishing with him, because he wouldn't be able to learn anything yet to speak of. But when he was 3, we planned a trip, and the kid was sick. 4, we planned a trip, and the kid was sick. yesterday, 5.5 years old, I got to go fishing with him. And we get out on the boat, and we're at the dock still, but we're on the boat, and he goes up to his dad, whisper, 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 whisper. Not yet, is his dad's answer. And then we go catch some Jack Crevalles on spinning rods with fish bait. What's that stuff called?
Fish bites.
Fish bites. On fish bites on jig heads. We caught some Jack Crevalles. And then he told me the trout had disappeared in the bay in the last couple of weeks. They've been doing really good on them. But there'd been no trout. So every half an hour, the kids over there, whisper, whisper, whisper. Not yet. So then we went in the bay. He hasn't seen a trout in a couple of weeks. And we're trying to catch some pilchards because the kid wants to learn about kite fishing. We're going to put the kite up in the bay and put a pilchard on it just so he can see what the principles are. So he throws the net, and I'm casting my jig head with the fish bites, and his casting net comes with a trout in it. And about the same time, he says, I got a trout in the casting net, I get a bite, and I catch a trout on the jig. So we anchor up the boat, and we put the kite up with a mahara on it. We didn't catch any pilchards, but we had some pinfish and quite a few maharas. And so we showed him about the kite fishing, and we caught some more trout and some ladyfish and some smaller jacks on jigs. Had a lot of fun. And pretty soon the kids playing with the dead shrimp in the bucket and playing with the jacks in the live well. And it's very obvious that 5-year-old has had his time. Oh, and I taught him how to tie an improved clinch knot and then tested him later, and he remembered how to do it. And whisper, whisper, whisper. Whisper, whisper, whisper. So we wind everything up. We're getting ready to pull the anchor. Abe pulls the anchor, and he starts to idle away. Whisper, whisper. Okay, I'll meet you up in the bow. Here comes Dad up the port side. Here comes his 5.5-year-old up the starboard side. The 5.5-year-old climbs over the castanet bucket, climbs over the anchor rope basket, and he gets around to the coffin box up in the bow, which I'm sitting on the seat facing the bow, so the coffin box right in front of me. He opens up the lid, and he reaches in, and he pulls out a hand of bananas. And I says, oh, boy, those are just right. See all the freckles? I love them when they got freckles. They're fully ripened. So I says, give me that thing. And I rip one off, and I start to peel it, and I'm about to take a bite. He says, wait a minute, I thought you said those were poisonous. I says, no, they're bad luck on a boat. And we would have caught snook and giant sea trout today if we didn't have these bananas on the boat. As a matter of fact, if I'd have known those bananas were on the boat before we started fishing or in the middle of fishing, I would have thrown you in the water. and then I say, here, eat a banana. So the two of us are eating a banana, and his dad's taping the whole thing. So his dad gives me a copy of the tape. So on my story on Instagram, my caption on the bottom says, 5-year-old found paddle dogging in North Biscayne Bay.
So you were a big proponent of not having bananas on the boat. Along with, we've talked about a lot of things today, and, I've watched a lot of podcasts that you've done with Tom Rowland, and haven't seen the one yet with Andy Mill for Millhouse Productions, but I'm going to go back and watch those because, we didn't really talk about, you're the pioneer of circle hooks and, sailfish releases down there in Fort Lauderdale. You did a lot of firsts down there, along with conservation as well. You were a pioneer in conservation along with the sailfish as well. And there's so many things out there that we didn't cover that everybody that's listening out there and watching, you can go and watch the real technical stuff that I'm sure everybody has asked you about bimini twist and rigs and everything. But I wanted to kind of get a backstory of kind of what nobody else has done. But if y'all want to go see Bouncer on any of those, y'all can go see him on, I mentioned a couple. Who else, if they really want to hear technical and rigging and...
Well, if you wanted to be a little more educated, you wanted to be a charter boat captain, the last one I did with Angler's Journal was really about the soup to nuts of making a living as a fisherman. Contracts when you're going to fish a tournament are very important. And by all means, if it doesn't matter whether you're a fisherman or a lawn man, a pool man, or a accountant or a doctor. The most important thing you have to do, which I dropped the ball on and I'm paying for it now, is today's society, you must commit to always putting 10 to 20% of your gross income into your retirement. That's mandatory.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't count on Social Security, you can't count on pensions anymore because pensions get ripped off by thieves. You got to have your own money socked away.
The mattress always works.
Well, no, the mattress isn't the best answer either because, truthfully,
you lose money.
The most successful people today that in my age bracket, they were wise, long-term stock market investors. They didn't invest in, oh, this might work, but like, what's his name? He invested in fruit. He bought some apples. Forrest Gump. I invested in fruit. I bought some apple.
Yeah, bought some apples.
Yeah, when they were just starting. So,
well, but when you're a fishing guide that's first starting out, if you're anything like I was, and like a lot of the fishing guides starting out there, money gets kind of scarce.
Yeah, but it's going to be scarcer if you don't put it away for the future.
This is true. This is true.
It just takes pain. I mean, I imagine you've done it. I know I've done it. That bowl of rice was a lot better than nothing.
Oh, yeah. I ate a lot of good. I tell people when I first started guiding, I ate a lot of good fish. I ate the best fish money could buy.
Oh, yeah.
But my red meat was beanie weenies and, hot dogs
Yes,
for
sir.
a lot of the times.
It looks like some of that was venison, too, though.
Oh, yeah, a lot of it. There's a couple of venison burgers that were,
I'm sure
that were around.
And those are the two most important things is good promotion and you know what else is really important for a kid to start, and it's another one that I mentioned on that podcast, but respecting your sponsors.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you can't say something good about your sponsor, don't say anything.
I think it was Mark Sosin told me, when you call up to talk to a sponsor, don't say what can the sponsor do for you. It's what you can do for the sponsor.
That's right. Almost definitely.
And I believe I got that from him. Well, Bouncer, I told everybody that, go search for your podcast to do the technical stuff. And, I mean, there's so much history with you and 50-plus years,
54 years full-time, 60 years in the fishing business.
Wow. That is a long time in any industry to be in.
What a livelihood. What a great way to spend a life. I mean,
and still enjoying it. Do you get to go with your old clients? Because I have a list of my old clients, the ones that are still around, that have invited me to go do this, go do that. I've taken a few of them up on it, and it's been fun. Most
of my clients, it's a matter of I'm going to be in Miami, any chance of being in Miami, we can all go out with AB. But I have a standing invitations to that kid Buddy Smith over in Little Rivers one. One of my mates started a fish market in Merle's Inlet, and his son now has the business, and I go see him all the time. And I get invited to go giant catfishing in the Potomac River. And
just if we could take all the invites that
Boston
we get and go, we'd have to live another lifetime, I think.
I mentioned that I got 6 in Jackson Hole. Well, I was out there fishing with a client there and floating down the rivers, catching rainbow or cutthroat trout and cut bows and whitefish, which they sneer at, but I thought they were great.
Hey, as long as you got something pulling on the other end of the line, I'm happy.
As long as you're careful, even catfish aren't bad.
Oh, yeah.
I caught a big old catfish today.
Well, even sail cats, they'll eat a topwater. And there's so many sail cats in the Indian River right now. You catch them on every cast almost with a topwater plug if you're in the area.
I was throwing 6-pound with Adrian and Regina Gray, and I hooked up on we were catching some trout, and I hooked up on a fish. We had to chase it around with the boat. And it came up, it was a giant gaff topsail.
They're fun. Actually, my mom likes. Have you ever eaten one?
No.
I have eaten them. They are better than any freshwater catfish you'll ever eat.
I knew a couple that ate a lot of them, and
My
then
mom-
they even started eating the hardheads, and that was throwing it too far.
Marty Rostigi told me he ate hardheads.
Marty Rostigi eats everything, and he makes them all good. You know, I got to mention one thing. We were talking about clown knife fish and stuff. If you want to have fun, if you've got a kid you want to show how to have fun, look at this little mirror lure.
Oh, yeah.
This would be the best Lake Ida bait ever.
And for you guys that can't see what he's holding up here, I have some lures out on the table here from Mere Lure Fish Bites, and he picked up one of the Menhaden lures that's a little sea eyes. And man, those things are absolutely incredible. They're so lifelike, and those fish down there like it looking alive.
How long have you been fishing?
Since, I don't know, 50.
And what was the first plug you owned?
The first plug?
52 M11 mirror lure.
Well, it was a 52,
Hands down.
52 M18.
mirror.
52 M18 was my first mirror lure.
Now that's interesting because 66 M18 was the best tarpon lure we ever fished for tarpon on the beach. And let me tell you something about, I don't know, I hope you're not on a watch.
No, I'm not.
I do charge by the minute now.
Okay.
But if you really want to catch tarpon, snook, and largemouth bass and groupers on plugs, tie a 3/0 J-hook on the end of your leader and take some Dacron or wax thread, or if you figure out the right knot, I'm sure braid would be great for it, but tie that J-hook to the nose of this plug. When a tarpon, a snook, a grouper, or a largemouth bass sucks this plug in and you set the hook, the lips are closed and the head of the plug is pushing against the lips. These hooks are floating around in midair, mid-water. If you put a J-hook right here in front of the plug, when you pull on it, the eye of that hook will slip right between the lips, and that fish is hooked before he ever opens his mouth to spit the plug out. Tarpon fishing with a 65 M18 with a circle hook in front of it, our catch rate was over 90%.
Wow.
Now, we learned how to catch tarpon on a regular mirror, 66 M18 mirror lure, but it was tragic because you'd be winding, thump, and you'd drop the rod. And every tarpon was hooked in the throat. And that's terrible for the tarpon and extremely dangerous for the captain trying to get the hook out of his throat. But if you put that J-hook in the front or a circle hook in the front, every fish is hooked in the lip.
Do you leave the hooks, the regular hooks on?
Well,
for the weight and
there's
balance?
no detraction to it because it is a balance thing sometimes, but also if a mangrove snapper bites it, he gets hooked back here. A Spanish mackerel bites it, he gets hooked back here. So the lead hook is for the suction fish. You know, they open their mouth and they take a gallon of water. The treble hooks or the following hooks, those are for the striking fish, the mackerel, the mangrove snapper, and whatnot.
Well, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Because that's definitely one I'm going to give a shot. I have never seen that rig.
People thought I was crazy. If the wind was blowing and we were fishing live shrimp for tarpon off of Miami Beach, we would put the shrimp on a 3/8 ounce hookup so that the bait ran in the bottom half of the water column, which is where the tarpon lay. And we would jump off a lot of tarpon on that, whereas if we were using just a shrimp and a circle hook, we hardly ever jumped off the tarpon. So I started putting the circle hook on the end of my leader and tying the eye of the Hank Brown hookup to the bend in the circle hook and then putting the shrimp on the hookup. So you had the shrimp, the jig head with the hook, and then you had the circle hook. And 95, 99% of the tarpon that ate the shrimp got caught.
Got caught. Well, that's pretty cool. Well, guys, like I said before, we're going to close this thing out now if y'all are doing a nice long drive.
Oh, did I tell you about my favorite rum drink?
Yeah, well, your favorite rum drink. Well, mine's sitting right on the front right there.
It looks like that's the dark.
That's actually, believe it or not, that's full of my honey. That's an empty bottle.
Wait a
And
minute, you have your wife in a jar?
only at times. But
No, but in all
for my bees.
seriousness, my favorite rum drink is the Papa's Pilar Dark.
Oh, it's great stuff. I love the new one they came out with. It's a few years old now, but it's aged in different barrels.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, that's delicious. It's good stuff. But well, that's going to cover about 200 miles if anybody's going to be riding along and listening to this. But I hope everybody's enjoyed the podcast out here with Bouncer Smith, my very first podcast guest. And I said before, if y'all want to listen to the technical stuff, I've listened to a lot of the podcasts that Bouncer has done. And if you want to listen to technical, this man can get as technical as you want to listen to.
Well, we could take all this equipment out on Alex's boat when I come down to fish with him in March.
Actually, we'll get on.
Do a podcast out on his boat.
We're gonna. I tell you what, we'll do another podcast in March when you get down after you go fishing with Alex and me.
There you go. That's a good plan.
We will get out and we'll cover some technical stuff, but it's good to hear the stories that you've had over the years. And man, if my career is a third of your career, I know you've got more stories than I've got time to do podcast.
Well, we could certainly have a lot of fun anyway.
Yeah, we'll
all fishermen are liars, but me and what's your name? Blair Wiggins, I think he is. But anyway, all fishermen are liars, but Blair and I, and I'm not too sure about Blair. I mean,
I never lie.
Me neither. I just tell fish stories.
That's it. Just tell about the fishing day.
You got it.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in to this podcast, the very first one with Captain Bouncer Smith. And make sure you go to the website, like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel, Facebook, and all that good stuff with the social media. Can you believe all the stuff out there these days? When I first started, I know when you first started doing fishing shows, the guys had the 50-pound cameras on their shoulders. And it seemed like every 3 or 4 years they got smaller and it got easier. And now we film on these little tiny chips.
Yeah, and the little square camera sometimes no bigger than that.
It's amazing, but
I can actually make entertainment with my phone.
Oh yeah, I do the same thing with Instagram now. All those good social media sites. But make sure you tune into any podcast that this man is involved with, and you'll definitely learn something. I'm sure y'all learned a lot about Bouncer and a little bit of the backstories today. So
and don't miss BWO because I watch every show he does. Everyone on Waypoint.
Yep, and my son Drayden is now the producer, and he's doing a heck of a job. But tune into the next podcast. They're not going to be weekly podcasts. There might be monthly podcasts, but the ones we're going to do are going to be nice and entertaining and good for a drive or just a good listen to around the house. But tune into the next one. Sign up to the website, and we'll let you know when the next one's out there. But thanks for tuning in today. And Bouncer, thank you very much for being my first guest.
What an honor.
Appreciate it.
But the best of luck to you with it.
Thank you.